Hello friends, it's Dave here from SaveDex and welcome to the second edition of the SaveDex podcast I've been trying out. And today I had to bring on a special guest. Now this person might have to go on the run from the police after this because legally he's only allowed to talk about indie games. So he finds this safe haven on this channel where he can now talk about a game from the 90s that was made by a very popular studio at the time, published by one of the biggest gaming companies in the world, and based on one of the longest running and most successful franchises in movie history. That game being Goldeneye 007, so don't tell the police that he's here, but we've got Geoffrey from the Indie Gaming Guild. Hello, Geoffrey.
Dave, how the heck are you? Thanks for having me. It's really cool to be here to talk about the little-known indie game, Goldeneye. I don't think many people have heard of it, right?
That is our cover story. We think it's an indie game.
Yep, it's an underrated gem. No one's talked about it. It certainly didn't influence, first-person shooters or any of that stuff. I think it's one of those that it's a good thing we're talking about it because no one on YouTube has talked about it before. So we're probably the first channel to ever do that.
As far as we're concerned, it is an indie game. But then again, ignorance is no excuse, is it? So there is that. But
Wait! I think I hear the sirens. They're coming. We have to wrap it up. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, quickly, let's go. Okay, so that's good because the first part of this conversation is actually not going to be about GoldenEye. We'll get to that later, but we're going to talk about hopefully some indie games because I got asked the question: what games have you been playing lately?
Do you want me to start with that? Oh gosh, I feel like it's so. I don't know if you find this, Dave, but a trouble that I have is running a channel. I feel like people ask a lot of times, what games do you play or what's coming out? And my mind always draws a blank, which is really sad. You would think that if we do YouTube, we should know the games that are coming out and what we're playing, but I can never remember, which is really pathetic.
I will help you out. Chefy Chef.
Yes, thank you. I mean, as far as like games, it's hard, right? Trying to distinguish playing games for fun, when there's spare time, or playing them for a channel or for a review or whatever. For anyone that doesn't know, I cover a lot of smaller indie titles on my channel and I review them, and that generally takes up most of the time for game playing. So the game I've actually been playing recently, and I'm not sure if a lot of people have heard of it, it's actually coming out to Switch on May 12th. It's called Rogue Lords. Have you heard of that one, Dave?
Are you allowed to talk about it yet?
Yeah, I bought the game myself.
Okay, good.
On Xbox. I didn't. So I.
Okay, it's not an embargo game. Okay.
No. I wasn't fancy enough to get a copy, so I just bought it myself. And have you heard of that one though, Rogue Lords, Dave?
No. Is it a roguelike by any chance?
Yeah, I mean, of course it is by the nature of the title. So it's actually like if you think of something like Darkest Dungeon mixed with something like Slay the Spire, and then maybe something like the turn-based game Battle Chasers Night War. If you mix those three together and tied a nice bow around it, a spooky, creepy bow where you play as the devil and Dracula and Bloody Mary
nice.
And the Headless Horseman. It's a very spooky tale, but it's a turn-based roguelike game basically that you go through procedural areas and you take on missions and you do turn-based battles, and it has that punishing roguelike nature of it. So I bought it. There was a day one edition that came out. It was $30 in the US, which, isn't a horrible price, but it's still kind of expensive when you don't have a lot of money. But it looked really cool, and I didn't see a lot of people talking about it. So it's really fun. It's really punishing, but the whole spooky nature of it is really nice. And I believe the full release, if you don't get the day one or early edition, does come out on May 12th. So it's also a timely game to talk about as well. Do you
Nice.
You like roguelites, right? In general, or not so much anymore?
I like roguelites. I don't play a whole lot, but I love the ones that I've played.
Okay. What's one of your favorites?
I think we did a list on this, didn't we, last year?
Yeah, but in case for someone that didn't watch that.
Oh yeah, that's true. You should watch it, guys. Go on. So my favourite roguelike, I would have to go with. I mean, Time with Sophie Rogue Heroes was Ruins of Tassos was one that we reviewed last year, not just for Switch Up, but on our own channel as well, because we got multiple review codes that way.
Nice.
That's like a top-down Legend of Zelda Link to the Past style game with the dungeons themselves being randomly generated. That's just a really, really... Have you played that one?
I have, yeah, I did play. I didn't play a lot of it. I played maybe a couple hours for a video back in the day, just like you did. It was really cool. Yeah, the blend of like adventure Zelda type stuff, but then you could build up your town. That kind of a loop is really nice because it encourages you to keep finding supplies or gold or materials or whatever because you're building up a home base area. That's a good choice for sure.
And also Road Redemption as well, which is like a motorbike one.
Funny story. I bought that. Well, actually, it's not a funny story. I don't know why I said that. I apologize. It's not a funny story, but I bought that game based on your video and your recommendation alone. I was like, Dave likes it. He knows this stuff. I'm going to buy it. And you are right. It's very cool. It's like Road Rash with a roguelike.
That was funny.
Wasn't it so hilarious? I spent hours working on that bit. It was...
no. But again, it was quite. It has its like glitches. It's quite janky, but I found it's one of the most addictive games I've played on the Switch. I'd have to say, I just could not put it down.
Were you someone that played, back in the day, because you and I are much older. We're old and decrepit, and we have our canes that we walk around. We're in our late 80s. Did you remember playing Road Rash?
Yeah, I never owned it, but a friend had it. I main thing I remember about it was getting a chain and then whacking the police officer with it.
Jeez, yeah, those were rough
you can do that.
The 90s.
You can do that in Road Redemption as well. So, sold.
So if you like Road Rash and if you like roguelites and you want the combination of that anarchy, then play that. Yeah. So apart from Rogue Lords, I've been playing Kirby in the Forgotten Land with my wife.
Amazing.
Yeah, I want to hear. I know you've been playing that, or did you already beat it yourself?
Yeah, we played the entire game on stream, not the post game, but we got to the main credits on stream. Really, really fun game. It's the most I've enjoyed a Kirby game
since any other specific one, or just in general.
Ever. I enjoy Kirby games, but most of the time I forget about them. But this was the first time I ever said to Sophie let's play Kirby again, and then sort of felt really excited to carry on with it.
Oh, that's awesome. It's such the where you can upgrade Kirby's abilities. It's kind of cool that they added a progression, or I don't know, something, an upgrade system, so it's not just...
and a town to build as well. And there's something about the gameplay I can't really... because it's like they've added a whole new dimension to Kirby gameplay. I can't really think what that was.
I think...
the third dimension, that was it.
Was it the third one? I think it might be the fourth one. I'm not sure if the third one doesn't exist. It's not real.
Does time come into it? Who knows?
Yep. Yes, exactly. It all just implodes, but yeah, Kirby's another good one. And everyone's gonna hate. I feel like a lot of people are gonna hate this, but I'm a huge Fortnite. I'm a huge Fortnite fan. Okay, I know people hate that. No one wants to admit it. But dang it, I like that game, and I think they do a great job with it, and I think it's a lot of fun. And so I play that a lot of times when I just have a half an hour or an hour to enjoy. So those are some things I've been playing, Dave. But enough about me. No one wants to hear about me. We want to hear about you. What have you been playing?
Oh, yeah. That's my channel, isn't it?
It's your channel. They don't care about me. They care about you.
Yeah.
So what about you?
So I've, on what you were saying about playing these games for review, I've sort of given up on that now, just because it got to a point where on streams people were saying to me, mentioning a game title, and I'll be like, oh, I've never heard of that game, and they'll say to me, but you reviewed it though, and I'm like, oh yeah, I did, didn't I? And I had to look up my review just to see what the game was, and it got to a point where the games weren't necessarily bad, but they were just forgettable, which I think is worse than a bad game. If they just leave no impact, because at least a bad game you remember, So in that time though, I've been able to go back to my backlog, and not just backlog, but games I've already beaten to replay them. So I'm actually playing games for fun. Could you believe it?
No, that's not a thing. There's no such thing as that anymore.
So I did one with Asdin last week, and I mentioned to him that I'd started Metroid Fusion on the Game Boy Advance. I've beaten that game already, so but I beat it again this week. Then I've jumped into Legend of Zelda: The Minish Cap, because I've never actually beaten that game. Have you ever played Minish Cap?
Is that the one on... I'm familiar with it. I don't think I played it. Is that the one on Game Boy Color? Is that right?
Game Boy Advance.
Game Boy Advance, okay. I don't think I played it, no.
It's the one where he shrinks.
How is that one? I haven't played that one, no.
It's really good. Like the way because you have sort of like your overworld, which isn't a very big overworld for like Zelda standards really, but for a handheld, it's what you'd expect. But then you've got like this other world, which is where the Minish live, or I think the Pickery there. I don't know, I see both those names, but they're like tiny people that live in tiny villages, and you have the ability to shrink down at certain points, and you're this little speck on the map, and then you enter the village, and then you'll see things like leaves that are giant, and then like one of the boss fights you have is like just a regular choo-choo, like those green jelly things, but because you're tiny, it's huge, like a huge boss, things like that. So yeah, I'm currently exploring. I've done 2 dungeons so far, and I'm just exploring the map, see where I can go, and just getting new items, abilities, as you do in Zelda. So I'll no doubt I'll talk about it again next week's podcast. So I've beaten the game, hopefully.
That's amazing. How does it feel just going back to an older game just to play for fun? As we spoke on it can be easy to get in this mindset of just playing games for a channel, for example, and losing the fun. I know I've struggled with that a lot. How is it just playing a game for fun again and not having to worry about covering it? Does it feel refreshing?
Yes, definitely.
Nice.
Yeah, it's really, really nice. So also on what I mentioned last week as well, and again on not playing this for fun rather than to make a video on, because I fully intended to at least do a stream of Nintendo Switch Sports when that came out, but I actually never got around to that. And if you saw last week's stream, last week's podcast, everyone, because last week's podcast with Asdin was about Wii Sports and Nintendo Switch Sports, but at the time, I'd only played Switch Sports for about an hour before I recorded and just tried out each sport once, sort of thing. So I was less than an hour really, and so I was giving my very, very first impressions on the game, and I was quite critical of it. Not in how it played, but in how bare bones the content is in it. Since then, though, I've been playing it more this week, and I've been playing it online this time, and I'm enjoying. My complaints still stand. It still feels like there's not enough in the game, but what's there is really fun, and the controls work really well. So yeah, it's just they are adding golf in the autumn, so hopefully they'll add a few more sports going on. But for the sports that are there's just not really an amount of different modes or anything. Whereas Wii Sports had those, like each sport had 3 extra training modes where you could play the sports in a different way. There's nothing like that in this one, so that's really my complaint.
I'm glad you're talking about it a little bit, because I haven't had a chance to play it, but I've heard those exactly what you're saying, that kind of mixed experience where it doesn't quite match that charm that a lot of us had when Wii Sports came out. But again, the Wii Sports, I know this isn't the subject we're talking about, but the fact that it was a tie-in game to the actual Switch, or excuse me, to the actual Wii, obviously means more people clearly got to play and enjoy it. But that game was just perfect for the time, and I've heard a lot with like Switch Sports, again, not having played it, I do want to, is that it kind of feels like a very corporate-y version of what you would think Wii Sports would be, where it doesn't necessarily have the charm, but it has like this what a corporate boardroom would say, or like a bunch of professionals would just say like should be in the game, but not like a fun, quirky experience. But I don't know, it looks cool, but those are some good points you bring up.
I feel like maybe if the people that were, I'm not just talking about like Iwata and Reggie, like the people like their presidents at the time, but sort of like the same people at Nintendo back then were on this now, maybe it would have more charm to it. So obviously the whole sort of development team and stuff are going to be different, have different leadership, and I feel like it's just they're trying to replicate what was already perfect.
And you can't really. You can maybe do something similar, but it'll never be that same, because it all blends in with like the time period, the way the Wii was. That motion control was, although motion control wasn't new, it was new in terms of an entire new audience, right? I'll tell you what, the best thing about Wii Sports. I'm going to preface this one by saying it's a funny story, but I apologize because it's also probably not, so I shouldn't preface it. But I already prefaced it. Anyway, Wii Sports. I think the best part about it, that my buddy and I, we used to play it all the time. We loved the golf. And our favorite part that we would just not stop laughing is the little sound that would happen when you like zoom in or out when you're golfing, it was that sound that goes whoop, whoop, whoop.
That was funny, yeah.
I know that's the stupidest thing to remember about that game, but we laughed our tails off whenever that sound would happen. And so if you haven't played Wii Sports, what are you doing?
It's true. I think everyone did. But anyway, so what else have I been playing this week? I have been playing another game that you might know, because I've restricted myself in buying games as well, partly just to save money and partly for the backlog. But I lost 100 gold points the other day because I didn't realise that your gold points on the Switch expire after a year.
Oh, I didn't know that either. Okay.
So a pound of my worth of my gold points went off. So the gold points I had left, I was like, I better spend these. So I saved them up and never spend them. So the Castlevania Advanced Collection was on sale, so I got that with it. And I don't know, do you know? I know you said I know you're a big Castlevania fan, but how are you with the GBA Castlevanias?
Well, first of all, that's awesome that you bought that game because it's so cool that Konami, in their infinite wisdom, are now finally actually trying to do something with the properties they have. I did buy that on Xbox when it first came out. They're tough. Honestly, it's really hard going back to these games. You know, modern games nowadays are really accessible for the most part, right? Like there's a lot of ways to just make it easier and explore more easily and all this. Going back to those games, specifically when I started with Circle of the Moon, it's really tough. It's really tough to just progress because it doesn't hold your hand, right? You really have to know where to explore, what weapons to find, how to get past certain enemies. So I'll be honest, I kind of fell off playing them because I just feel like I couldn't get anywhere because I'm not good enough, as the kids like to say.
Strategy guide.
What are those?
I'm not using that, but the first game on there, I don't know if this is just in Europe or if it's America, the first game on there out of the 4 is just called Castlevania. And
interesting, okay.
When I went into it, and it said on the copyright thing, it said like 1986 and 2000 and whatever year, and I thought, is this a remake of the original? Like on the Game Boy Advance, but it's not. It's a completely different game. It's a Metroidvania. You're different characters to the original. So it's a compare. So I thought it was weird because like the Castlevania 64, as everyone calls it, is actually just called Castlevania. And so there's 3 games out there that are just called Castlevania.
That's a bit confusing.
Yeah. But this one, I am really enjoying it. It's the only one I've played out of the 4 so far. So what I like doing on this one is obviously you press select and you can bring up the map, and it's just these sorts of games, it's quite addicting to see it fill out as you go to new areas.
Mm-hmm.
And pressing start brings up your stats and you can do your items and things, but it tells you your EXP as well and how many more points left till you next level up. So I found a spot where there's like an electric skeleton where I kill it and it takes 30 points off and things like that. And there's like an area full of some easy to kill enemies that give you lots of EXP. So I've sort of been hanging around there and reloading the room and then just leveling up like crazy. So that's been fun.
Just doing that old school grind to get a little bit stronger, right?
And also in this whole old school thing, like I know because it's like a collection and Konami have put in a thing where you can create your own save states if you want, things like that. I'm not doing that. I'm doing old school. And for that, there's save rooms about, and they're the only way you can save a game. If you die, you go back to where you last saved. So when I'm getting to a new area, and it's been a while since I last saved, and I'm exploring, I'm trying to sort of find where the next save room might be. Right. But then I'll accidentally stumble into a room that the door locks behind me and I've got this big monster to kill and I've not got much health left or potions or whatever, and then I end up dying and losing a lot of progress. So it's kind of scary, and obviously it's meant to be a horror game, but that's what I'm finding scary, the fact that I might just wander into a big monster that I can't kill yet.
I love that. I love that that's where the fear comes in, is just getting trapped into a room. Well, it's kind of the equivalent of people nowadays that play, Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Elden Ring, right? You get to an area that maybe you weren't ready for. That's kind of what the classic examples were, right? Castlevania, Metroid, where you really explored somewhat freely, and just like you said, you stumbled to an area that you can't get out of. Then you kind of get screwed. So you're not even utilizing any of like the save state stuff, so you're going like really hardcore, huh?
It's just I'm not going to be like snobby and say to people you shouldn't use save states, but all I know is I use save states to beat Zelda 2 on the 3DS.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, I just cannot say to myself I've beaten Zelda 2 because I didn't do it properly, you know? I just, it doesn't feel like I've beaten the game because I did that, so it's just a personal thing for me. Yeah,
you have beaten Cuphead.
That's true, yeah, so I've proven
I don't
my
think
worth.
you've talked about that. I don't think you've talked about it enough, so you should tell people that you've beaten it so they know you're really good.
Oh, we'll have to do a co-op stream or something when the DLC comes for that.
Oh man, one day I think I need your help. I feel like I need your help specifically in beating that game because I haven't got. I think that when I dropped off of Cuphead, it was like you might remember the names of the boss, but it was like that pyramid boss level where like
the genie.
The genie comes out of the sarcophagus or whatever. I couldn't beat it, so I stopped after that. I just got too angry at everything.
Yeah.
So
what you got to do, the secret is, you've got to shoot him and not get hit yourself.
So the secret is get good, as
yes,
cool people
pretty
say.
much, yes.
Well, I'm too old for that. Apparently, you're much younger in spirit than I am. So, well, okay, Castlevania. There you go. That's good. I'm glad you're playing Castlevania because it is one of my favorite series and properties.
Everything comes back to Cuphead when we talk, doesn't it?
That's kind of the underlying theme of your channel. It all comes back to Cuphead. Cuphead owes you a lot, I think.
It's kind of the first when we first talked to each other. It was like the first game that got brought up, I think.
Yeah, I think it was. I don't remember why, but it may have been because the first stream that I caught you and your wonderful wife Sophie on was Goblin Sword. Is that what it's called? Goblin Sword.
I remember that one. Yeah.
I saw you guys streaming that, and I was like, "Holy cannoli!" There's actually somebody else that's playing that game, and it's been love. It's been love since then.
Aww.
Oh my gosh, so cute. And for anyone that doesn't know, I was going to say for anyone that doesn't know, Dave and Sophie, they live in the UK. My wife and I live in the United States, and we've actually sent each other sweet treats from across the pond, and we've come to appreciate all the treats of each other's culture, so that's always a fun thing too.
The town where I work has recently opened up an American candy store.
Oh, okay.
And I've not actually been by it when it's been open yet, so I'm wondering if they've got Swedish fish in there.
Yes, Swedish fish, famously from Switzerland. So. All right, what are we getting onto? I'm excited to keep talking here about all this good stuff.
Yes, before we get to our main event, has there been any sort of gaming sort of news or reveals or games coming up that are noteworthy for you?
This is tough because when I knew ahead of time we were going to be talking about this, because we talked briefly about it. And again, I feel like such an unprofessional person because whenever I get this question, I can think of nothing. And so I was racking my brain. What are some indie game things that I'm excited about? What are some regular AAA games that I'm excited about? And do you want to know what it all comes back to?
Cuphead.
I mean, that would have been appropriate. Fortnite.
But Fortnite. What's happening with Fortnite then? I don't know what's going on with Fortnite.
Again, please don't be a hater. Anyone, let's all love each other, be kind. But, I think Fortnite does a great job with their seasonal events and the way they do live events, and they really interact with the community and stuff. So, there's a lot of changes happening in the game, and there's a new season coming in the beginning of June. And so I keep track of, I like to focus on game updates for games that necessarily aren't indie games in my case because that's kind of what the rest of the time is for. So I keep track of games like Fortnite or like Dead by Daylight, games like that have like new content. For me, that gets me excited. I know a lot of people could care less about that free-to-play or, extra stuff that comes. But any multiplayer game that's able to successfully weave a narrative through that, I think is pretty fascinating. And both of those games do a good job. So this is kind of my long-winded way of avoiding the question, I guess, because I don't have anything that's made me very excited this year as far as news, which is a little disappointing, or I just can't think of anything. So I'm going to have to defer to you because I want to hear what you're most excited for as far as like news.
Is Doctor Strange being added to Fortnite because he's got a new film out now?
Yeah, Doctor Strange is actually in the Battle Pass this season, so yes.
There we go. There's theme news. So for me, this week has been a pretty, because obviously it's mostly Nintendo news I follow. and there's not really been anything that jumps out at me except for the other day. And also we'll point out that the month of May, I think, is usually quite quiet for news because June brings E3, which I don't think is happening this year. But there's no reason why Nintendo can't do a direct next month anyway on their own. So maybe they're wait. But next month we're also getting Mario Strikers, the new Battle League it's called, and they released a new trailer for it the other day, which didn't tell us a whole lot more than what we got at the direct. But what Nintendo tend to do with their trailers is they'll show the first one, which just pretty much tells you this game is coming. Then they'll do a second trailer showcase. This one was 5 minutes long, where they pretty much show you everything that's in the game.
Right.
And for this one, it's a bit concerning that there's only 10 characters. It's kind of going back on what we said about Mario Golf last year when that came out. We did a video on that, didn't we?
We did, yes.
So whether they're going to add more characters as time goes on, or if they're unlockable, they're just not showing us everything yet, remains to be seen. But I know some people are concerned about the fact that there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of different game modes in this one. But I'd like to remind people here, I mean, there might be younger people that have never played like the GameCube or Wii Mario Strikers, but those games didn't have a lot of game modes either. But it was just you had like a tournament mode for single player and then just your exhibitions for multiplayer. And that's pretty much what the game was, and it was very, very replayable. So if it has the same content as the Wii one, I'm happy.
So what do you think? So did this new trailer? So let me ask you this: as someone, I never played any of the Super Mario Strikers games. I like the golf ones, tennis ones. Haven't played the Strikers or soccer/football ones. So did this trailer do anything new to get you excited? Like, did it show off anything else to kind of get you excited from the initial trailer, or does it just more of the same kind of?
Well, it's hard to tell because this trailer was in Japanese and I couldn't understand what they were saying.
So you're not fluent in Japanese? Okay.
No. So they haven't... released an English language version of this trailer, but from what I could see, there's a new move where you can barge into your own teammates to give them a boost forward, which is going to add for more strategy to the game. And also the fact that they've done away with the captain system, where you choose one of the main Mario characters as your captain, then you'd have like things like Koopa Troopa, Dry Bones, or Birdo, or whatever as your sidekicks. So you could only have one main character, and you had to choose 3 smaller characters. But now it's just there's 10 characters they've revealed, and they're all, and you can mix and match your team between the captains, and you can have like a Mario on both teams as well. So if someone chooses a character that's not selected, the other person can choose a character as well, which is a nice touch.
Okay, so it sounds like they're kind of mixing up the way the actual team structure and stuff works.
Yeah.
Again, I haven't played it, so I can't speak on the series, but it sounds... I know it's one you've talked about for a little while that you're excited for since it's been announced, so that's cool.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to this one. But yeah, it kind of looks like they might just add more content afterwards or something like that, but we don't know yet.
Okay. Well, hopefully it'll at least be a polished game. I mean, Nintendo normally puts out, even if they're a bit bare bones, they're usually polished. So hopefully that'll be the case with this one for people that are excited.
Because with the golf and tennis one as well, which again we said bare bones, but they added more later. Those were made by Camelot, but this one's made by Next Level Games, who made the previous Mario Strikers games.
Okay.
And Next Level Games' last game was Luigi's Mansion 3, which was an incredibly polished game. So
Luigi's Mansion 3 is so good.
So very, very talented studio behind this one. I reckon gameplay-wise, this will be a really fun game still. So anyway, so talking about really, really fun games, especially for multiplayer as well, should we move on to our main event?
I think we should. I've been excited to talk about this with you, and thank you for letting me come to your channel to talk about it. I'm excited.
That's good. I mean, it's better than talking to myself for an hour.
Yeah, you got to do what you got to do. Sometimes, you got to do that to, get the voices out of the head. I understand.
Yeah. So, basically, another game I had been playing recently that I didn't mention then, because I'm going to mention it now, is I did a live stream of Goldeneye 007 on the N64. And I thought I'd dust off my old N64 and try it on 00 Agent, stream it. I streamed it for over 3 hours. I did 6 levels. And then I decided to try again a few nights later, and I ended up streaming it for about 7.25 hours into it. Was like gone 2 o'clock in the morning when I decided to go to bed. And I didn't beat the game. I got through it faster than before, but yeah, I spent about 2 hours on that train level before I gave up. And so this is GoldenEye 007. We sort of had a conversation a few weeks ago, and just the topic of James Bond got brought up in this game, and I was like, let's bring him on for this podcast, because I like talking about my memories of games. So, Geoffrey, where were you when you first played GoldenEye 007?
Where were you back in the day? Well, I want to preface our conversation by saying I want to be very transparent, okay? Can I? Is that okay if I'm transparent?
You're so transparent, I can't even see you.
Yeah, much like some ghosts in Luigi's Mansion, although they're not really transparent. Anyway, that was a stupid aside. I apologize. I'm looking at my
in.
That's fine. I hope you do. I'm looking at my Nintendo 64 games right now. They're just sitting on a shelf. I don't own a copy of GoldenEye.
No, you can't have mine.
So, I was going to see if you could just send me yours, and then you don't have one, and then you're the bad guy, not me. Anyway, so I want to preface this by saying I don't actually currently own a copy. I am looking at my N64, but I don't have GoldenEye at the moment. However, I remember back in the day when I used to, one of my favorite memories of GoldenEye specifically, apart from just playing through the missions, trying them on different difficulties in multiplayer, was a couple of friends of mine back in the day. We would have very specific kind of routines when we would play multiplayer GoldenEye, specifically on Complex, the Complex stage that everyone knows about. And we would spend like our Saturday and we would go snowboarding. We would go into the mountains and go snowboarding and have fun and have a great time. And then we'd come back that night and have a sleepover. So we'd get all of our snacks and we'd have a big old sleepover with a couple buddies, and we would just sit down and play GoldenEye all night long. And that's not really a story that's too dissimilar to anybody else, because I think the biggest, fondest memories for myself and for a lot of you is sitting down with 2 or 3 people and just battling it out on these awesome stages with the host of guns, trying slappers only, trying rocket launchers, trying proximity mines. It was just such a blast doing that, and I feel like it's something that we just don't have nowadays with the landscape of online. So for me, the memory and the time frame goes back to answer your question of snowboarding, having a sleepover, sitting down with a bunch of junk food, and just blasting through a bunch of multiplayer matches and having a good old time, waking up the parents in another room, and they'd be mad at us, but it was GoldenEye, so you had to do it. But that was kind of like that's like the first memory that comes to mind. But what about you? What do you go back to when you think of those first times in the 90s?
Well, I remember the first time I ever saw GoldenEye. It was obviously in adverts I saw for it as well. I didn't really know anything about James Bond. I knew it was an action hero in films, but I didn't even know Goldeneye was based on a film. I just thought it was a game using this character. And so I remember my brother borrowed it off a friend, and it was a Friday evening, and he put it in. I just watched him play through the damn level, and it just blew my mind, honestly. I'd never properly seen a game like that before, especially because I was 11 at the time, and I'd only really played like Mario, Sonic, like cartoony. I think at the time we just had Mario 64 and Diddy Kong Racing were the only N64 games we owned. So I was very colourful, cartoony games. To see a realistic game where you're killing people by shooting them, I loved it. Absolutely loved it. And and I remember I made the expert observation. I said to my brother, "It's just like you're actually there walking around." I'd never seen anything like that before. It was amazing. So basically that evening, my brother sort of knew the game because he'd played it at his friend's house. And I was just watching him play like the facility level. I mean, we'll go into the different stages later on to talk about it. But I remember he got to the surface level, the first snow one. So you go to that one twice. And he got so lost in that one because it's so big and open. And I just remember restarting that level ages ago, and he was like, he got to the dish bit and he couldn't remember how to finish the level, and he goes, "I know you jumped through a roof somewhere because I saw my friend doing it." I remember that he couldn't find it anywhere, and we looked up a guide, and the guide, like, not an online guide obviously, from a magazine, and the magazine just said it's nearby, and my brother went, "Oh, I know where it is," just on the word nearby. He just knew exactly where to go. So anyway, but we jumped in and out of the multiplayer. We play the single player for however long, then we'd go to multiplayer so I could try it, and then back and forth. But I just remember my dad coming home that evening, and it was like 11:30, nearly midnight, and he was quite angry at us still being up playing it, especially because at the time, younger audiences, this will blow your mind, we didn't have a TV in our rooms.
Right.
There was a TV downstairs, which can't use that. There was a TV in my parents' room. The N64 was on that TV. So anytime we wanted to play Nintendo, it was in our parents' room. So it had to be we couldn't play late at night when they were asleep. That's what it was like back then. That's the dark ages we had to live through. And
it was painful times indeed.
Honestly, it was worth getting in trouble for anyway. It was so fun that night. But then eventually because the thing is, we never bought this game originally for a few years because we were just borrowing it all the time. I knew the game so well just from the amount of times we borrowed it off people. And eventually we did. So when we did eventually buy it, the box I have is the silver Player's Choice one, because it had been out for so long. It was like half the price when we bought it. And yeah, the multiplayer was so good, like so good. And people might like scoff at it now, saying it's split screen. You can't have bots in that one. Perfect Dark at least let you have bots, and so if you have two players, it's just the two of you trying to fight out. That's boring. I'm like, I know people might not gravitate towards that now, but I still love it, honestly. And I don't mean people. There's been a recent thing where people have found out a way to find 4 TVs so they can have people play it like multiplayer properly. They're saying, I'm like, the whole looking at other people's screen, that's just part of it for me. Like, it was never an issue for me. Like, it was just, like, my brother would always play as Trevelyan. And one reason he did that was, if we ever got to the caves level on multiplayer, if he ever got like 1 point up and we were doing a timed match, all he would do was run against the wall and crouch down. So if I looked at his screen, all I saw was black. And because his clothes matched the walls pretty well, it was hard to find where he was.
That's awesome. I love that.
So yeah, sometimes like the limitations of games are often what makes the game better in a way sometimes, because sometimes you create your own ways of doing things, put in your own custom rules for things, and it makes it more personal that way.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's not something that you can easily do as much in the gaming landscape now, because most things, there obviously is still some local multiplayer stuff, but that most of it's online. So obviously you can't do those sorts of things because, of course, cheating and all that. So the fact that back then you could just sit down and make your own rules, like you said, on the fly, or like the whole, I don't know if you remember this, a thing that I remember a lot is the whole thing about looking at the other person's screen area, right? The whole screen cheating thing, so much so that they made an indie game called Screen Cheat, which is all about utilizing that function, right?
Yeah, we have that.
I remember you talking about that, but it's such a specific time frame thing that, again, for me, I remember just playing and everyone would always say, don't screen cheat, but everyone screen cheated. I know I did, because it was just it was part of the quote unquote strategy, of figuring out where everyone's hiding. And a lot of the areas, like I said, the complex specifically had like those walls or something that, how you could like walk through some of them, and there was like little
colored.
Yeah, there was like little hidden areas. So, people could just hide. So I think you kind of had to screen cheat a little bit to navigate around that. But even something like that, you don't hear people talking about that nowadays because it's just not a product of the gaming ecosystem where you can sit down and play on the same screen, at least in an easy way, right?
And here's another thing, though, about that, the screen cheating thing was, although with the exception of the example I gave with my brother going against the wall, when it comes to sort of, the opponents can see where you are on your screen, but you can do it to them as well. Like, everyone's got an even playing field. Everyone can do it. It's not really cheating if everyone can do it.
Right. That's fair. Because, if you're not doing it, that's why I said it's kind of like a strategy, quote unquote, because if you're not doing it, you're at a disadvantage. Chances are one of your buddies or whoever you're playing with is probably doing it, right? So
making it hard mode.
Exactly. A question I have for you, because I don't know if this was just where I grew up or the friends and families that I was around, but for me, God bless them, my parents are wonderful. I love them. They're wonderful. They made good rules, but I wasn't technically allowed to play Goldeneye until I was 13. It was a teen-rated game here in the United States, and I wasn't technically allowed to play it because, that would have been bad. So, again, God bless them, wonderful parents. But I would always sneak playing the game at different times at friend houses where they didn't care as much. But I remember when I was 13 that they did actually let me get the game, which was such an exciting thing, and even introducing like my dad, who never played games, to even get into it a little bit. So I guess for you, I'm wondering, is this just like a certain area, like that people grow up in, or did you have that thing where you weren't allowed to play it because of an age thing? Because it was a thing for me.
When before I'd played this game, I went to a friend's house, and he had Goldeneye. He showed me a bunch of his games there, like Mario Kart and Diddy Kong Racing, before I had it. And he was going to show me Goldeneye, but then his mum stopped him. And even though this friend was 2 years younger than me, he had been 9, probably 10 by then at the time, and he's quite upset about not being able to play it with me and stuff. And he says, and his mum said, it's just because I don't know what his mum lets him play. Because it's rated 15 here in the UK. I've just taken my box down to check that.
Okay. That was some good research on the fly there. Nice.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm actually looking at the instruction book. It's quite nostalgic.
An instruction book? What the heck is that? That's not a thing anymore.
I know. They kill a tree so they can teach you how to play the game.
Oh jeez. Wow.
Yeah.
Way to bring down the audience there.
So they don't do it anymore. It's fine. So basically, I mentioned this to my mum when I got home and said it's a James Bond game where you shoot people, so I wasn't allowed to play that. And my mum just says, I wouldn't have minded. So I was like, okay. So, like, my mum, obviously, my mum wasn't very strict about. I mean, she obviously, when I was like young, I couldn't watch violent, gory things, whatever. But I watched like South Park when I was 10 or 11 and things like that. And she would restrict if it got too much. She would say, but she was quite relaxed about it overall. Because obviously when you've got a brother that's 3 years older than you and he's getting into things at the appropriate age, and I've seen this in sort of other families as well, like the younger siblings tend to get into older things earlier because of their older sibling doing it. Like, especially when it comes to like films and TV shows, like, you know, it's like my brother's watching those things, you know, like Friends and Buffy and things, so I would watch it at a younger age than him, so it's just how it goes. So so I can't remember where I was going with that, but about the age rating thing, that was it. So it is a thing in the UK. We do have age ratings. Obviously for you, this was 13, but for us it was 15. But again, like, it's up. Really, it's not like it's only a law to sort of sell it to a child. But for a child to watch a grown-up film or play a grown-up game, it's up to the parents, really.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, of course. You're definitely right about that. It's just a funny thing that, again, I think it just seemed like such a timely thing because, you know, at that time, you know, games weren't digital, obviously, like they are now. So it was just, you know, you had to either, especially if you were a kid or a teenager, right? Most of us, or at least I didn't really have much money. So if I like mowed the lawn or did some certain chore, maybe, but like it required a parent to go with you to Blockbuster, to go to the store, whatever it was to get the game. But nowadays, I have to imagine it's probably like easier to circumvent some of those things because you can just download things digitally. So it's just such a product of the time with GoldenEye, I think, specifically, because it was the first time a first-person shooter like that, at least on console, really became the mainstream, right? PC gamers were probably like enjoying that stuff for a while, but for us console gamers, that was kind of the first time, right? So it just reminds me of that specific time frame as well. But what else? Yeah. What else about GoldenEye? What are some things we should hit on to get people excited about this classic game?
Yeah, especially because of those rumours of a potential remaster of it, and, you know, in the style that, you know, when Perfect Dark got brought to the Xbox 360, and it's on Rare Replay, isn't it, and Game Pass now, I would love it if they did that with GoldenEye, because it's the same game, but they've upped the graphics, so it still looks N64-esque, but it looks different to the original. But it kind of, instead of looking like the N64 one, it looks like how you remember it looking. And, you know, they've added in dual analog controls because the N64 didn't have that, and like online play and just things like that. So it's not like a completely different game. It's the same game, but it's more user-friendly, more quality of life improvements. But what I worry about with this happening, because I've seen it happen before with other games, is that because this has been revered as like one of the best first-person shooters ever made and all that, the newer generations might have that in mind, thinking, like, put it on going, okay, best shooter ever, show me what you got, and then they'll just automatically hate it and go, oh, it's only because nostalgia's the only reason it's good. And to be fair, nostalgia is probably the reason why I regard it so highly, but even I understand going back to certain games that you loved back in the day and then not liking them so much now. But I'm going to say this so unapologetically. I streamed GoldenEye last week for over 7 hours. The game is amazing still.
Okay.
So
you felt it still held up then in terms of I haven't played it for a few years in terms of to reevaluate it. So did you feel like it still holds up in terms of the way it moved and the way it performs and all that, or can you decipher between that nostalgia and how it actually is?
Okay, the problems the game has, that if a younger person was to play the N64 one for the first time now, the two major issues they will have will be the graphics and the controls. And the overall performance, I'll group in with, you know, the presentation, because obviously it's a lower frame rate than what you're used to now. But that's why a remaster would fix those. Again, you'll have dual analog controls, maybe gyro if it's on the Switch as well, and you'll have it upscaled. It'll be HD. It'll be 60 frames per second, maybe. So they'll have online multiplayer. Those problems gone. But, and I say this a lot with I was playing GoldenEye on my HD TV, Not a huge one, like a 32-inch one. And when I first played it, it looked blurry, like very, very blurry. But by the time I got to the second level, or was halfway through it, I was used to it. And the fact that it looked the way it did wasn't a problem anymore. And everything is still clear to see. You can still make out what everything is. The levels all look distinct from each other. Even when you revisit an area, in like the Surface 2 looks different to Surface 1, for example. And it makes them memorable. And for the controls, yes, I understand. You're using the C buttons to sidestep and strafe and stuff, and then the stick to look around. You have to stop to aim properly with the crosshairs, with the R button. But the game's designed around that limitation. Like, for example, enemies... If an enemy's shooting at you, and this is the way old school programming, and I was to sidestep away, and they'd carry on shooting at where they were shooting originally, they won't follow you. So that'll give you time to stop and shoot. But ultimately, this game is a stealth game. For the most part, not always. Okay. Not always. Not every level is like this, but most of them, when you start the level, the enemies don't know you're there.
True. But that's kind of true for most games, though, right?
Yeah, but what I'm getting at is when, say, the times I used to play Call of Duty, to go back to shooters, there would be some stealth levels in it, but for the most part, I'm going in, I'm invading this building and stuff, and the enemies are all shooting at me manically, and it's just run and gun, run and gun. But here, this is why and again, this is just me saying it, but I think Goldeneye, Perfect Dark, I still say they're the best first-person shooters I've ever played. And as much as I have enjoyed other first-person shooters, but because it's not just run and gun, it's espionage. You have objectives to do. You have to sneak around the levels. Even when you do get caught and they're all shooting you, you can clear that area and get to a new one where people still don't know you're there. And you have objectives to do. If you play on a higher difficulty, it adds more objectives for you.
Right.
And sometimes it's quite vague what the objective is. So you actually have to explore the levels and work out for yourself, like, where is this thing I need to find? Where is this person I need to talk to? And the dam level, the first level, is a great example of that. If you play it on the easy difficulty, all you need to do is get from A to B. Do whatever you like, kill everyone in the way, or just take them out silently. I mean, you will need to kill them, but that's all you need to do. If you play it on Secret Agent, you have to destroy all 4 alarms. Oh, that's just a little extra thing, finding where these alarms are, then jump off the dam.
Right.
If you play it on 00 Agent, you have to do those objectives, but you also have to find this screen and throw a bug, some sort of techno blabble thing on it, whatever it is, a modem, I think they call it.
Technical term for it, yes.
And then you've got to go underneath the dam in this area that you don't even know is there if you're not playing it on 00 Agent, because you have no reason to go down there. Mm-hmm. And you need to shut down the computer. And those are things that you need to explore and work out for yourself how to do them. And that really was the magic of Goldeneye, because I at first was playing, again, go back to Dam, just only on the easy difficulty at first. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't, and when, after knowing this game so well and I was trying the harder ones, it blew my mind again, the Dam level, finding out there was this whole other area I knew nothing about underneath. Yeah. And it was just incredible. And it just continues, and as the level goes on, some levels, if you play it on 00 Agent, it's the same objectives as Agent, because it gets more like it's following the story of the film a lot closely then. Whereas this game has scenes that don't take place in the film, but they sort of filled in some gaps.
Right.
But yeah, so that's my take on it anyway.
Oh, I appreciate your candidacy with that. It's nice to hear another fan's perspective of it, because we all have different memories of it, good, bad, and otherwise. And I can see what you're saying about, the game if there actually was a remake or remaster in the form of how yeah, the Perfect Dark one was, you're right, it could be pretty divisive. I think people like us are going to look past a lot of maybe issues or what could be issues nowadays, but I think if people looked at it with that fine-tooth comb of just knowing that like this was a game for the time that revolutionized the way we play and explore and encounter enemies and all that, it could do well. I guess my fear would be that they would just add in too much, whoever did it would add in too much content, like extra stuff, that it could dilute what the core experience was. Because right, games I already spoke on, and games like, you know, Fortnite, Dead by Daylight, like Call of Duty, all these games have their audience obviously, but they're all about all this extra content and customization. And while you had a little bit of customization in terms of like your characters and the cheat codes and things like that, I wonder if like would they add in extra stuff for online, like extra costumes and customization, and could that dilute the experience? I mean, it's hard to know, right? Speaking on levels, especially when you brought up Damn, now this isn't a surprise to anyone because people have been making videos and talking about this forever, but something that's still to this day, even though they've done like breaking the boundaries to look around the stages, I still have the fondest memories of playing Damn, and when you're on the top of the dam, you know, you can look out all the way across the dam water and you see like the little island out there. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yes.
I know this isn't, again, a new revelation by any means, but for me, even to this day, even after watching countless boundary-breaking videos showing that there's really nothing over there, that's the first time for me a game really created this sense of, I just need to know what's over there. Like, why is there this little island that looks like you can get there? There has to be a secret. There has to be a secret gun, a secret character. There has to be a secret way to get to a different area. And that sense of just kind of like mystery and what is it was such a palpable thing that, you know, we obviously have that a lot in games nowadays, especially with like the Soulsborne things. There's always little areas you can find that are just out of reach. But for me, that dam level, that little island at the very top where you could see it with your, I don't know, I don't know if you got the sniper rifle on that level, but I just remember seeing it and getting so excited. Okay, so yeah, just zooming in and being like, we have to get there. There has to be a way, even though there's really nothing over there. So, do you remember that, or like other little secrets like that?
Yes. So the intention was that there was going to be an objective for you to do on that island. Like that was, but they scrapped it. Maybe time constraints, but they got rid of that objective. But the island itself remained in the game. So. So yeah, I've done the whole magician revealing the trick to you. It now seems boring to you probably. That's there.
No, it's fine. I already actually knew that. I didn't know if we like should spoil that or whatever. Yeah. I did already know that, but that's what's funny. Even knowing that, there's still like I still have this mystique with it, even though it's just some random little asset in a game that has probably other assets. You know what I mean? But that time period with the '90s where there wasn't the age of the internet, where you can just look up anything, unless you heard it from a friend or someone on the playground or a family member, someone that knew something about a game. Goldeneye was one of those that like you only heard about these little secrets or cheat codes or whatever, how to do an objective. It was from a friend or it was from a strategy guide or a magazine. You couldn't just look it up and know immediately. And I think that created this sense of mystique and mystery around those types of games, specifically with Goldeneye.
Oh yeah, for me it was in the facility level. Where you were in the vents at the beginning, and you drop down where the toilets are. Mm-hmm. But if you're up in the vents carry on though beyond there, and there's no way to get across there. I always wondered what happens if you're able, and I think people have done it with like Game Genie and things like that to get there. But and I'm guessing there's nothing round that corner. But the fact that you could see down the end of that vent, and then it goes left. I always wondered what is down there, and that was my damn island basically.
That was my damn island. No, I know what you meant. But it's awesome, little moments like that, where nowadays, if if a game had, like for example, if the GoldenEye remake came out and say there was someone that was like 20 years old, never played it, and they hopped on and they didn't know anything about GoldenEye, and they see that little vent thing or they see the island, they might be like, oh, cool, what's that? And then you look it up online, and within a minute, you already know. Whereas back in the day, you just didn't know, and it made the game even more exciting, Speaking of... Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. I could go on forever about how the internet has ruined a lot of intrigue in things, but I won't.
I assume that's a topic for a completely other video or podcast.
Yeah, the fact that you can just look up anything at any time, anywhere, as just like I say this to people a lot. Like when you're trying to remember, who was the actor who was in so and so, or what's like, and then they're straight away, I'm going to Google it quickly. I'm like, no, don't Google it. Remember it. It's good for your brain to just remember it. And I'm like that. And even if I'm for ages trying to remember a quote from something or like who was in what or whatever, I'd rather remember it on my own than look it up, because then there's no satisfaction.
You sound like that person. Like, get off my lawn. Sound like that person. I appreciate you owning up to it, though.
You kids and your music.
You kids and your music.
We had the Spice Girls in my day.
Oh man, this is we're too old for this. So I'm curious, real quick, because I'm looking at a list of the stages. Because I'll be honest, I can remember some, but I couldn't tell you all of them off the top of my head. What are your?
I'm not a real fan.
I already prefaced it by being very transparent that I don't currently own a copy, so that got me off the hook, I guess. What are your let's say top three. What are your top three favorite stages? Now that can be either solo or multiplayer. I'm just curious, like, what are your go-to stages as far as like either a memory or when you go back to play the game? I'm just curious on that.
Well, my number one choice is both multiplayer and solo player. That's Facility. It's got so many memorable moments. You got the bit where you're in the vents at the beginning, you shoot the man that's on the toilet. It's got a great stealth section. You can go in all guns blazing, but it's the corridors, and it's sort of made for stealth. And even when you get to the latter bit where there is no opportunity for stealth and they're all shooting at you, you can get through the doors and then have them come to you. And I described this as being a hornet. Because I've seen on a documentary once where hornets will scout out to find a beehive, and they'll come and invade, and then the bees will come out of their one sort of tiny hole one at a time, and the hornets just kill them one at a time as they come through. So that's why I call it being a hornet, where the guards can only come through the door one at a time, and I just take them out as they do.
That was a very well thought out and specific reference. I appreciate that.
Yes. And one of the game's developers is in that level. Did you know about Dr. Doak?
Oh, I didn't know that. No, where? At what point? And like, which character is it, or is he?
When you play in 00 Agent, or it might be Secret Agent as well, he's one of the scientists. He's like an agent, but he's disguised as one of the scientists, and he gives you the key card thing that gets you into the final room, and he's called Dr. Doak in it, but he's based on one of the game's team called David Doak. So he just sneaked himself in the game there. And then obviously it ends with you meeting Alec Trevelyan, and it's that scene from the film where they're putting the mines on the gas tanks, and Oromov comes in, and great scene. But so that is my favourite level. I think about second and third though. I quite like Archives, which is the one that starts off with you're arrested, and then you break out and rescue Natalia, and then you speak to Mishkin. What I like about that one is it's funny that the guards are interrogating you, but they've left a gun on the table in front of you, so you can just pick that up. And but the thing is, the way to play that level, because the time cheat, we'll talk about the time cheats a bit later, you have to beat that level on 00 Agent in like 1 minute 20 or something like that. But to do that, you just do not pick up that gun. Just run over and slap the guard that has the key to get out, and you get his gun. Then you just run through the level without getting a gun out, because there are fewer guards when you don't have a gun out. And you can run through that level, get to Natalia's room, then run to where Mishkin is without meeting any guards. And you do that in 1 minute 20. That's very satisfying. And my third favourite level, I'm going to say the first time you're in the bunker, because that's again a really good stealth opportunity. If you want to know more, see my stream. I did excellent.
Nice segue there.
Yeah. So how about you, Geoffrey?
It's fun just hearing everyone has different memories about each of the levels, and there's some that obviously are just we don't like, obviously, but it's hard. I think I like the couple, like dam and facility. Obviously, those are just such standard ones because they're the first couple of levels, but those two are just the whole feeling, especially with Dam, when the music kicks in and you're having to go through each little area. It was a lot more linear, and specifically because of the little island. But as far as like maybe the lesser known levels, I really like Train. I think Train was cool. I liked going through the different train corridors. I thought that was really fun. I don't even have specific.
I would agree with you there if I hadn't done that stream the other day where I spent 2 hours trying to beat it and failed.
That's fair. Oh, I don't even have like a specific memory around like these levels in the same sense, but just when I think of the overall feeling that the game provides, Dam, Facility, Train, I really like. And I know a lot of people don't like the surface stages because they're literally just like a wide open, barren, snowy landscape where everything looks the same. But it was such a cool twist to kind of open up these stages where, although Dam and Runway, things like that, had open areas, the surface levels were really pretty unique in that they were quote unquote mini like open exploration area, and it made it hard to find certain objectives, but it was a fun way to break up the more linear corridor areas. But when it comes down to multiplayer, for me it's complex. While I love Facility, the whole complex level, just the little corridors, that little like area in the middle of the map that there's only like the one way up the ramp that turns around, but you can go out, I think like a window or something, and you could just camp up there. Just that stage just has so many memories in it. And
I was so glad that got brought back in Perfect Dark as well, that level.
Which clearly shows that, that's a fan favorite for a lot of people, but...
Yeah.
But yeah, those are some ones that stand out, but they're all. Well, I shouldn't say they're all good, but there's some levels that I think you were talking about. Were you talking about the other day when we talked about the Streets level? Was it Streets you were talking about?
Oh my god, yeah.
Because I hate Streets. I hated that level.
Okay, I always have fond memories of it because of the tank, obviously, and that was an iconic level in the game. And I would still say, I love that level in easy mode because you can just jump in the tank and chase. But Matt on 00 Agent, it is rough not because it's hard, but because it's inconsistent. Because you got the guards on the street shooting rockets at you, and it's kind of hard to see where they're coming from. And sometimes they're not shooting rockets at you. I found on my stream the other day anyway. And I was getting very frustrated with that one. But then I discovered that even on 00 Agent, there is a hidden body armor in that level. And once I found out where that is, I did it first try.
Of course you did, because you are a pro, because you beat Cuphead.
Cuphead, yes. So I also want to touch on what you said about Surface as well. I really like Surface the first time you go there, because you're given a sniper rifle from the get-go, and you can see the enemies from very far away, and I was getting a lot of good headshots on that level.
Nice.
And that is very satisfying to do, but I'm not a fan of the second Surface level just because it's dark and you can't really see anything, which is by design, because they've done it that way so the guards can get to you without you seeing them come in. I suppose that's the whole challenge of it, but I'm still not a fan of that. One of my pet peeves in gaming is dark levels.
Yeah, I know you've talked about that before, just not being able to see in general, but even if it is part of the design.
Yeah.
Do you have a least favorite level out of all of them? Like, I guess more so single player. Do you have a level that you just, whenever you've got to it, you're just like, it's going to be a slog? Do you have one that like absolutely sticks out as I just hate this level?
Probably Surface 2.
Okay.
because it. But then thinking about maybe the jungle one.
Okay.
I mean, it's a nice. Obviously, it's a nice, a unique setting for the game. But you had those drone guns, don't you? The turrets that are shooting at you from distance. They're not too bad to take out and stuff. But it's when you get to the Xenia fight on the bridge. And my brother always told me the way to do it was to throw a load of remote mines on the bridge. And when she runs, just blow her up. But she always seemed to survive that. But then I discovered that if you just stand at the end of the bridge and aim through the trees as she comes through, you can just shoot her dead quite quickly.
There you go.
But only in agent mode, though, not in 00 Agent. She's tougher in 00 Agent.
only on the baby easy mode apparently.
Yeah, and I suppose Control. I really like Control up until the bit where Natalia's trying to do the computer work, and you get all the guards come in. You have to protect her. Yeah, but
Yeah.
I love the bit leading up to that though. Like when you're going around the level on your own, and Boris is there, and he pulls the gun on you, and you're not allowed to kill him though, and.
Yeah.
It's weird. I found it weird, especially because if you kill Boris, Natalia refuses to save the world for you, which I found weird, especially because in the film she hates him.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, they took some liberties in the game to, I guess, make it a little bit better with that sense. But
I also like that in the first bunker level, which is like set 6 years before the main story of the film. You meet Boris there, but he's just called Programmer at the time. And you threaten him to... Obviously, you get him to hack into the thing for you. And he does that, and then he accidentally sets off the alarm and puts his hands up. You're allowed to kill him at that point. And if you do, that creates a massive continuity error.
I mean, yes, that's a good point. But I mean... there's got to be some creative liberties, right, in terms of the game versus the movie to flesh it out more. I would say for me the level that I just hate is Statue, because Statue.
I know what you mean there.
Not only because it's dark. I mean, a lot of that level is just dark, but it's so maze-like and labyrinthian, again by design. But like, I feel like I could never get anywhere in that stage because just the way you can get blocked by corridors, or the level being so dark, as you said with Surface 2. Those stages, I think, that just arbitrarily kind of make it a maze, especially on higher difficulties. That one I couldn't get past that one very easily.
And also the fact, especially when you're going for the time trial to get the cheat on it, is very like dialogue-y as well. Like you have to go find Valentin and then have the text come up for that, and then meet Trevelyan, and although you don't have to do the whole Trevelyan talk, and that's kind of, so when you're redoing attempting the level over and over again, you have to sit through that Valentin dialogue each time. That is annoying.
Yeah, that part for sure. You're right. It's always frustrating when you just want to skip past it for
and he doesn't meet Valentin there in the film.
But again, it's not going to be exactly like it's just like the whole book and movie thing. There's always going to be things that are off. How dare you?
And that's the thing, because I said this to you earlier, that I had never seen a James Bond film before playing this game, and I knew this game very well. So when I saw the movie for the first time, and I can't help but, even though it's my favourite Bond film and I'm a huge James Bond fan, it feels weird to watch it because I'm just thinking of the game, even though the film came 2 years sooner. And right. I remember one time in the when it was on TV, and I'd already seen the film by this point, and the next day at school, my friends came up to me and said, because he hadn't seen the film yet, and he said to me, they got Xenia's death wrong because she gets killed up in the tree, but she's meant to get killed on that bridge. And I'm like, the film came first. Like,
right.
like, that's the thing you've taken notice of what was different, is it? Like,
I mean, everyone's going to have their different thing that jumps out to them, of what was different in terms of continuity.
And that's another thing, because another level I quite like is the frigate level, where you're on the boat.
Okay. What did you like about that one? I don't really have any memories one way or the other about that one.
Because that's the one where you're rescuing the hostages.
Right. And
I remember what you're really doing is you're killing the person that's got a gun to the hostage's head, and the hostage is just running around, scream like manically, and you're just leaving them. So right. Where do they? You don't know where they go, and it's like, I know in a modern game with that situation, there'd be a little dialogue of Bond saying, "My boat's on over there. Make your way to there." They'll just add a little bit of dialogue like that, wouldn't they? But another thing about it is, because you have to go to the helicopter that's on the boat and throw a tracer bug on it, and that's one of the objectives. Oh
yeah, I completely forgot about that part of it. I was trying to remember that section, but yes, now I remember it.
So in the film, That
Here we go again.
And I would say when I was younger, I used to pronounce it frigate, not frigate, because I'd never heard the word frigate before.
You're a frigate. Sorry.
But in that thing, he's on there, and they're launching the helicopter. But Xenia and Oromov have sort of hijacked it and taken off. And Bond knows this, and he's running to try and get to it. And the security pin him to the wall, and all he can do is look on as the helicopter flies away. And I'm like, Bond failed though. Like, he's meant to throw a tracer bug on it. Like.
Oh, jeez.
And I was sure, but that wasn't until the second time I watched the film. Because the first time I watched the film, I remembered that he threw a tracer bug at the helicopter before he got pinned to the wall. But I must have just been thinking of the game because he does it in the game.
Jeez. So it's blurred together. The game and the movie have just become one amalgamation of Goldeneye-ness.
So let's move on to the time cheats, because this was such a great idea, and it's a shame you don't really see something like this anymore. So there are cheats in the game that affect it one way or the other. Like, one of them is turbo mode, where Bond moves faster. One will give you infinite ammo, one will make you invisible. I'd like to talk about that in a second. But to unlock these cheats, you had to... Sometimes when you beat a level on a certain difficulty, it would tell you at the end a target time. If you beat that target time, you unlocked the cheat, which you access in the cheat menu. Now, if you play a level with this cheat on, and you beat it, it doesn't count as you beating the level. So you can't progress using a cheat, but it's a way to sort of work out what to do in the level, I suppose, if you had invincibility, for example. And some of them were just cosmetic. Do you remember DK mode?
Yeah, I love the whole big head mode, but it called DK mode, where that was always funny, especially multiplayer.
Although I said that was just cosmetic, but it made headshots a lot easier, didn't it?
Oh yeah, of course. I remember just rocking. We would play a lot of DK mode and turn on paintball mode, because we used to do paintball.
Yes.
Back in the day, and that combo for us was always just hilarious.
And always no radar for multiplayer as well.
Oh yeah, good point as well.
It's weird, weird that had to be a cheat and not just an option.
I mean, I guess because it was so integral to, how you would find people, obviously at the time. But yeah, it is interesting.
and it was a new thing, wasn't it, at the time? And and again, the multiplayer was just a last minute thing they did. They didn't do it. They did it without permission. The team that made it, just to throw it together to see, and they approved it in the end and turned out to be iconic because of it. Like, it's weird to think just how we almost never got that multiplayer.
It's funny that I'm actually glad you brought that up, because that's something that I only learned about, I think, last year. That the whole GoldenEye multiplayer, was just essentially like a last minute thing that they wanted to do for fun. I didn't even know that, and I think a lot of people probably don't, because it's such a thing that unless you looked it up or watched a video or something, you wouldn't know. But it would have changed the whole... likely another game would have come along to do it, but it's true. It would have changed the whole multiplayer shooter landscape, at least for a few years, right?
Yeah, and it's like how... not going to go too much off topic, but Smash Brothers, Miyamoto denied them permission to use Nintendo characters in it. But then Iwata didn't tell Sakurai that Miyamoto said no to it, and they carried, because he used his initiative, and so Miyamoto will like the final product, and they just went ahead and used Nintendo characters anyway, and then Miyamoto liked the results, so he gave them the go-ahead to use them. How different would it have been if they had to create original characters for their platform fighter? That series would never have taken off.
That's actually a really strong case point, because there have been other obviously similar fighter type Smash Brothers games, but that either use other properties or just random fighters, and as we've seen, they just don't do as well. So that's actually a really good point.
And for Smash Brothers Melee as well, James Bond was a highly requested character to be added into it.
Oh really? I didn't know that. That's
cool. because of GoldenEye, but obviously at the time Rare went to Microsoft, and which is why Joanna Dark wasn't in it as well. But I think Bond wouldn't have got in there because of the movie licensing nightmare it would have been.
Yeah, good point. That would have been cool, but yeah, that in the long run that probably wouldn't have worked, or wouldn't have been able to be in future iterations of the series.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean, say the game Goldeneye is a licensing nightmare anyway, isn't it? So you got like Microsoft, Nintendo, you got Amazon now own the James Bond rights, don't they? And
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
It makes it kind of, which is sad for a property that's, I mean, at least in terms of gaming, is pretty old. That so many people, they could do so much with it, especially because there hasn't really been a good Bond game lately. I mean, there's been some. I mean, I'm talking about in the last few years. So, we could use something in that realm for sure. Although I know, IO Interactive, the makers of the newer Hitman games, so they're currently working on their own version of a Bond game, which likely will be pretty good. But will it have that same, charm like Gold? I mean, maybe charm's not the word, but the same nostalgic charm as Goldeneye, The World Is Not Enough, those types of games, Everything or Nothing. I guess we'll see, but.
I mean, it's hard to think. I didn't play a lot of the James Bond games after GoldenEye at the time, just because they usually didn't get that good reviews, and at the time I had to be really picky about what games I bought because I didn't have much money. And
Sure.
So I mostly relied on the gaming magazines and only the ones that got like in the late 80s, the 90s scores I bought. And the Bond games would usually get like 70 or something like that. So as much of a fan I've been, Everything or Nothing was the one I did buy and I loved it. But anyway, that's by the way, but it's been like 10 years since the last James Bond game. That was 007 Legends, and that wasn't very good.
No.
To put it bluntly.
Nope. A lot of them haven't been, unfortunately.
Yeah. So to go back on what we were talking about the cheats. So the Bond Invisible was like the iconic cheat for me. For that one, that's the one where you had to do the archives level on 00 Agent in under a minute 20 or something like that. And because if you had Bond Invisible, obviously no one can see you. Sometimes if you were to shoot a gun near a guard, they'll sort of look like around, like confused. And it was funny. And one thing I liked about it was, it's just something my brother did. And he was on the bunker level, and near the end of the level there's these two guards standing by the door, but they're facing each other. And my brother sort of stood up there and he looked at them one at a time, and then he just spoke a conversation that was happening between them. And like he called them like Jim, and like, "Hey Jim, how you doing?" "Oh Bob." And the thing that made me laugh was one of them had like there was certain faces, like there was like 6 or 7 faces on the guards that they repeated.
Yeah. Yes.
There was this one face that was kind of bug-eyed and had sort of like the teeth smiling thing, and he looked really creepy. And at one point he was sort of looking at him and he went, "Well, doesn't my face scare you, Jim?" Like that. And I don't know why, but every time I see that face on a guard, I just start laughing because he has got a really scary face.
That's hilarious.
But
I love that.
It's just, why would someone say that to someone else?
Because Goldeneye.
Like,
But it is true. It like it's like the game poking fun at itself for clearly either the limitations or whatever of just having, a few different faces. It's fun. That's good.
okay,
times.
and so we talked about how this game sort of revolutionised first-person shooters on console, at least. It revolutionised sort of. There was a big player in multiplayer gaming. I wouldn't say revolutionised there, just was a huge player in it though. But one thing it also revolutionised, and maybe not in a good way, is the escort character.
Oh,
because people love a good escort character, like Ashley in Resident Evil 4, for example, is a common complaint one. That Natalia is the ultimate annoyance in any game, I'd say.
Oh, good lord, yeah. Oh, man, I was almost hoping we didn't talk about this because it just makes me upset. The escort mission. Oh, why? Whoever thought that was a good idea? Ugh.
It happens in the film.
Oh, all right, but I mean, they happen in a lot of films, but it doesn't translate to fun gameplay. Come on, Rare, get your act together. No, I'm just kidding. But Yeah, the escort missions.
I think yes, modern day we can say Rare, get your act together.
I mean, yeah. Yeah, the escort missions, yeah. Oh boy, okay.
So when you first meet Natalia, you're in a jail cell next to her, and you use your watch magnet to get the key, and you beat the guard, and you get the key for her cell, you let her out, and then you go through the level. But the problem there is you got to do a lot of shooting, and she will often just run in front of you while you're shooting, or get shot by the guards. So I remember reading a strategy guide for Goldeneye. It came free of a magazine, not an online one, and they said on this level, they said you'll get the key to Natalia's cell, but she's just a pain in the arse that gets in the way. So leave her in there.
Oh, jeez.
And this is how I always do it. I always leave her in there. I go round the bunker, like kill all the enemies, do all the objectives, then I let her out when there's no one there to shoot her.
Right.
But then in the later levels, she's, there, isn't she? And you can't... But at least she gets given a magnum in the later levels, I suppose.
Yeah, but does that really help? I feel like just the AI or just the way she was programmed, even on different difficulties, was just such a... This is just the thing with escort missions in general. The same tangentially, with like tailing missions, like a lot of the older Assassin's Creed games, like the first two specifically, where you'd have to tail and just kind of hang back, but like get close enough. But then if you're too close, you fail. I feel like escort missions lie in the same realm of that, where it's just never done well enough where it doesn't feel tedious. And that's the case with Natalia. It's the case with Ashley in Resident Evil 4. I feel like there's always this... People get so... it's just so sad when those times come around, because... mostly because it's usually an instant fail as well, right? Natalia will be killed, or Ashley will be killed, or runs off, or whatever. And there's not a lot of wiggle room, which makes it more frustrating,
The most annoying thing about Natalia getting killed is it doesn't let you pick up her magnum.
Jeez. Way to show respect. Way to press F for respect for Natalia.
Yeah. On this, is it like a gaming rule when you're obviously you're a game developer, aren't you? So you know everything.
Yeah.
So
I know so much.
If you're doing a tailing mission, like in Assassin's Creed, is it a rule that the person you're tailing has to walk faster than your walking speed but slower than your running speed? So you can't actually comfortably tail them.
Yeah, that's a good... No, you're absolutely right. It's always this awkward like cadence of how you...
you have to run, then stop, then run, then stop.
Or you like stop too long, and then like all of a sudden it's like, hurry, go catch up, and then you catch up, and it's like you're too close, and it's just like, you know what? This whole thing is just a mess, but that's okay. At least it doesn't happen often in modern games, I guess.
Okay. So another thing is, obviously this was before voice acting was a thing. They had it in Perfect Dark, so the dialogue was just text at the top of the screen, which I'm fine with. But there was things, obviously, like I was mentioning, the time cheat missions where you need to do it in a certain amount of time. You got to read through everything, the dialogue Valentin said to you. But I remember there being a tip. I don't know if it's true or not, but if you keep hitting pause, it speeds up the dialogue. But I don't know if that's true or not, but I always do it.
So was this the first game that you would have done that in, or have you always done that in games where like you just press a button to skip through something? Because it's easy to think it does something, right? Even though it probably doesn't in a lot of games.
Yeah, like loading screens. And not that GoldenEye had loading screens, but or cut scenes, even though they're not skippable, you still hammer it, don't you? To hopefully that does something. But yeah.
Yeah, that was that little nuggets of info like that you're saying about trying to skip through it. Again, you could only hear about those things through hearsay. And that's what made it so fun. It's like, oh, did you hear you can do this in this level or pick up this gun and do that? Like, it just made it so much more of like a fun experience because of those things.
Yeah, and also I mentioned pausing as well. So the pausing, you don't just go to a pause menu. It has a little animation of Bond looking at his watch. And that's the pause menu. And annoyingly, you could get killed while you're pausing the game. Like the guards are still shooting it. Like you're still in danger of being shot in that animation of him looking at his watch, which was very annoying sometimes. But it was the only way to access some items that you needed for an objective, like your camera and so forth. And so let's go on to when you beat the game. When you beat it in Secret Agent or 00 Agent, you get 2 bonus levels. Do you remember those?
I wouldn't. I if I didn't have the stages in front of me, I would have remembered them mentally and could probably walk through them, but I wouldn't have remembered the names. But now I can tell you they're Aztec and Egyptian.
Yes,
because I did my research.
So Aztec is based on Moonraker,
right?
Because it's got like the Moonraker shuttle. Because obviously in Moonraker, Drax's base was sort of in that sort of environment. And the Moonraker launches from there. And Jaws is there, obviously. You have to kill Jaws, even though you don't kill him in the film. But Jaws turns good in the film. It's annoying me. But they're obviously harder levels. But sometimes... So I went into the Bond films right after I played this game. And one thing I do notice as well that Rare did, they were really good with their attention to detail in the environments. Like in the film, when after Bond comes out of the toilets at the beginning and he goes into that room and he goes down the stairs, it's the exact layout from the game, or the game is the exact layout in the film. So they do replicate a lot of areas from the film. Obviously, they took liberties and expanded a lot on places because you have to for a game. But but the attention to detail was, especially for the time, really, really good. And so I did notice when I was watching Moonraker for the first time, there's a bit where Jaws is pushing Bond down the corridor to put him in the room that's going to be underneath where the shuttle's going to launch. And I when I was watching it and going, oh my god, that's from that level. And it's just amazing that they captured, because the whole level itself is very different to what the film looks like, but they got this one area down really well. So after I watched Live and Let Die, which had Baron Samedi in, and obviously Baron Samedi sort of dies in the film, but then at the end you see him on the train, so he survived because he's voodoo and resurrects himself and all that. So my friend said to me, so is Baron Samedi in the next film then? And I said, oh yeah, he is in the next film, even though I'd not seen the next film, and he's not in the next film. But the reason I thought that he was is because the next film is The Man with the Golden Gun, and in that Egyptian level, Baron Samedi's the bad guy in it, and you get the golden gun in that one. So that's why I thought Baron Samedi must be in The Man with the Golden Gun. But what Rare have done there is they've taken elements from Live and Let Die, being Baron Samedi, The Man with the Golden Gun, which has the golden gun in it, and The Spy Who Loved Me, because that's the film that takes place in Egypt. So they've just mushed those 3 films together, essentially, to make this level. So what they were doing there, I do not know.
But it made for a really 2 cool, really bonus secret challenging levels that you got to just experience all of this basically James Bond shenanigans in one go. So it at least made for fun extra stuff, even if it didn't make sense, I guess. Because likely a lot of players at the time, myself included, I hadn't really seen any Bond movies that I can remember, or very few. So I think it was a way for a lot of players maybe that didn't watch the older films or even any of the newer-ish films at the time, and maybe it sparked, like, their intention was to just spark that love of all things James Bond, even if it wasn't in perfect step with the the films.
Yeah, it's because obviously because Baron Samedi and Jaws were playable in multiplayer as well, as were Mayday and Oddjob, who are villains from other Bond films. And so, but they're not in the single player at all. And I remember my magazine, N64 magazine, mentioned that, and they said that when they had interviewed Rare at one point, they asked them, why aren't Oddjob and Mayday in the single player? And their answer was, that's a good question. They just weren't.
They just weren't. That's always a good answer. They just weren't.
And when I sort of saw Goldfinger, the one with Oddjob in, I was like, man, how good would it have been if they'd done a Fort Knox level Something like that with odd jobbing, and but then again, as a child, and it's something that I suppose we say it now about games lacking content, and I'm not claiming Goldeneye was lacking content at all. It was, for its time especially, a beast of a game. There was so much there, so much to do, especially with the multiplayer. But I still would think, man, this could have done with a couple more levels. But if they had those couple more levels, I still would have said, there should have been more,
Well, that just shows the sign of a good game, right? When it's a good game when you've wrapped up whatever the main content is and you want to keep going. Whereas some games, you get to the end and it feels like it stayed its welcome or even outstayed its welcome. So Goldeneye was one of those rare ones that, pun intended, rare ones that it had a lot of content, especially to be crammed on the N64. At the time, the fact that there were this many stages, this many options, the cheat codes, the multiplayer, the characters, like the different difficulty, all these little bits of it. If it had too much more, it might have, could have backfired because like maybe they would just cross too many weird paths with the stories and the movies and, but who knows, because we can't know what would have been.
Yeah, the music as well. That was awesome. I should mention the music.
The music was iconic.
That music, yeah. So another thing about it is, it's like back then as well. Mario Kart had 16 tracks, and that was your lot. But now, now it comes with 48 tracks, and we're getting 48 more, and people are still going to go, I wish I had this one and that one still. Like, Smash Brothers could have 200 fighters in, and we're still going to be going, but they didn't include that one. Like, it's just, we're never satisfied, are we?
We're so difficult. Us humans are so difficult.
Yeah.
We can't ever be appeased, apparently. But I mean, but at the time, we didn't know any different, right? Like if you were just a console player, this is what. Right, that's what games were. And if anything, it's again, that's kind of what, to touch on what I said earlier. My fear is that as much as I personally love seasonal stuff and certain free to play things, like as much as I personally enjoy that, I think a game like this, if it did come back out in some shape or form, having extra content maybe for people that didn't grow up with just a one and done experience could be a bad thing, so.
Oh yeah, and I imagine this would come out at a cheaper price. It wouldn't be a full price release or anything, like kind of Perfect Dark wasn't. Or I imagine it probably would just come to Game Pass.
Yeah, I mean, you would think it would have to, especially if they were trying to promote the people to play online. Like if you want to get people to really jump into it, that's probably the way to do it.
Yeah, the thing I was going to say as well, it's because they did a remaster of GoldenEye already, like back in the noughties, like 2008 or 9 or something, in the same way as Perfect Dark.
Mm-hmm.
And like they actually like pretty much finished it, but Nintendo said no to it.
Right.
And because Nintendo published the game, and like they had everything in place for it, but they never released it because Nintendo said no.
Which is a bummer.
And would that be a problem today? Would Nintendo say no today? And I'm thinking, what if the compromise was, okay, this is the GoldenEye remaster, comes to Game Pass, but they also release it on the Switch eShop? I think that could be the compromise.
But could they... I mean, I'm not a business person. I'm not smart enough for that. But could they say no since it's not their property anymore?
It's awkward because they published the other Rare games, but they're on there. But because they still hold... because they published GoldenEye, they paid for the game to be made in the first place. Mm-hmm. They still need to be on board with it. And that's why, like, James Bond's... Because you got, like... Again, you got Nintendo... There you've got Microsoft and Rare who own that, and so you got like Amazon own the James Bond franchise and whatever. Like at the time it was Activision that had the James Bond like game license. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of like so many different parties involved, and that's probably why. Whereas Perfect Dark, that was just Rare's original creation. Do what you like with it, Banjo-Kazooie, Rare's original creation. Do what you like with it. But with this, there's just so many different people involved. And also, with GoldenEye, if it's a remaster, you'd have to pay for, like, Pierce Brosnan's likeness and Sean Bean and Robbie Coltrane and all that.
Yeah, good point. So there's a lot of different moving parts to it that may not hold up that well. Yeah.
But we'll see what happens with that. But hopefully it does come. I mean, can't do any harm, can it?
No, if anything, it at the very least it gets fans like us really excited to play it again in a more modern space, and in the best case scenario, it gets people that never experienced it to fall in love with the property in some shape or form. And somewhere in the middle is also fine because at least people get to experience it.
I also hope that, because my worry is that, especially younger gamers that I've only played sort of like the run and gun shooters, would probably just rant about how rubbish this game is because they find it too hard, because it's not just run and gun, it's you got to work out how to do objectives and things, and I worry that that's going to put people off it.
But if it does, it's okay. At the end of the day, we got to think that everyone has experienced different things. I mean, we're not all hardcore pro players like you, Dave. If I go back and play, the original, Donkey Kong or whatever, the one where Mario has to go up and down the scaffolding, I can't do that. I don't think it's fun. I think it's boring. I hate it. Like, even for me, and I know this might be blasphemy, I don't think Pac-Man's that fun. But you tell that to some people, and they're going to say that's blasphemy. So I think at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. You know what I mean? It's going to find its audience, and at the very least, it'll have the people like us to at least really re-enjoy it. And there's tons of people that would want to re-enjoy it.
No, everyone should have the same opinion as me. I will not accept anything else. No.
All right, well, that's fine. We can try that as well. That's cool.
Geoffrey, you don't like Pac-Man and Donkey Kong, but you like Fortnite. You are a Gen Z.
I'm such a I know, and I'm Well, hey, here we are. Well, is there closing thoughts? We could wrap this up about Goldeneye, about all this stuff.
Yes.
How do you want to wrap it?
The last thing I want to talk about briefly is the remake. It did get released on the Wii, and then came to PS3. Did you ever play that?
Yes, I believe I played the. I'm trying to remember. I think I played the Wii version, and it was fine. It wasn't the feeling from GoldenEye. It was a little too different, and I just remember it was fine. I remember buying it and being really, really excited, even though it was going to be like the motion controls, at least for the Wii version that I got, and like really thinking it was going to hopefully reinvigorate that feeling of GoldenEye. And while there were some nuggets of how the stages were, characters and stuff, I just remember kind of walking away from it being like, okay, no, it wasn't that experience for me personally. But what about you?
It was basically Modern Warfare, wasn't it? I still had fun with it, but it just wasn't GoldenEye. Yeah, exactly. And they changed things from the film as well, which they had to update things because of the time period it's set in, but still there was some things, like they killed off Zukovsky. I didn't like that. That doesn't happen until The World Is Not Enough. So yeah. so I know you've not got much longer to go here, so if we move on to our viewer questions, you okay with that?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's definitely
finish off with our viewer questions. So Water Music 34 says, which indie game soundtracks do you enjoy the most?
See, again, these are these questions that I know a lot of people. First of all, great question, Water Music. I'm not someone. I know a lot of people love, on Spotify or whatever music platform, listening to game soundtracks. I've never been that kind of person. I've just never. I'll listen to it in game, but it's just not my cup of tea to do it outside of the game. With the one exception being Castlevania. I know that's not an indie game, but for me, I bought Castlevania maybe about 10, 15 years ago. I bought this really expensive special edition from Japan. It had like every CD from every Castlevania that I would listen to that. Again, I know it's not an indie game. Apart from that, I don't listen to like soundtracks from games outside of the game. With that being said, the game that first came to mind when I was thinking about this question was the Adventure Pals. So the Adventure Pals.
Oh, yes.
A lot of people don't know about that game. It's still an underrated gem.
I've got the theme tune in my head now.
Exactly, yeah. So for anyone that hasn't played the Adventure Pals, it's from this really wonderful developer called Massive Monster, and they're actually the team that's putting out this game coming out soon this year in 2022 called Cult of the Lamb. Anyway, the Adventure Pals just has this downright sublime musical tracks that really just instills this sense of adventure and fun and playfulness, because after all, in that game you're playing as a character who has a pet rock called Mr. Rock and a giraffe with a whirly tongue that swirls you around as you jump around the stages. It's just a bonkers, bizarre game for platforming fans, but the music there is so good that I will often jump into the game just to hear the main track because it really just sparks that sense of adventure. Apart from that, I couldn't really tell you many memorable ones because I don't listen to them outside of playing a game. So what about you? What are ones that, do you have ones that stick out to you?
Well, there's Shovel Knight, obviously. And that's a boring answer, isn't it?
I mean, not necessarily. I mean, if you like it, it's what you like.
Cuphead.
Right. Yes, it's boring. You have to think of a different one. It's really boring. Think of a different one.
Cuphead.
No,
especially the game completed music. I know that one very well.
All right. Get off your high horse.
And I'll tell you what, though, the one that I've got to mention two that Sophie would like to put as an answer. One being Radio Squid.
Okay.
There's one particular music track. If you watch our top 10 favourite indie game music video we have on the channel, you'll hear the one at the end. But another one is a game called Chicory that came out last year.
Okay, yeah. I haven't played it, but I've heard a lot of good things. Well,
Sophie liked the look of it, and she I asked Glenn, because it got shadow dropped on the eShop during an Indie World, and Sophie liked the look of it, so I said to Glenn, from Switch Up, do you want us to write a review for Chicory for you, because Sophie's interested? So they gave us a code. And Sophie fell in love with it, and she awarded in Switch Up scoring, she gave sound 20 out of 20 for it. She just really fell in love with that soundtrack. So, and she bought the soundtrack on Bandcamp as well as Radio Squid. So, yeah, she absolutely loves it. So yeah, I'll say that.
Nice.
Okay, so the final question is from Tom Mancenturia, who said, is it difficult to keep enthusiasm going for your channels when you see inane, mind-numbing crap getting pushed by YouTube and getting millions of views as a result? That's a good question.
I appreciate just getting right to the meat of things, Tom. Great question.
Pulling no punches, are you?
Yeah, that was hey, that's okay. Everyone's got to have. I mean, to be fair, some might say my content on my channel is inane, mind-numbing crap, so who am I to judge? But I think in reality, as a creator, is trying to put out content, as much as possible. It's, I guess, the simple answer is yes, it can be really frustrating because the without getting on like a pedestal or anything, I think, more and more people want super short, digestible content, but what I seem to see is, and I'm talking about only YouTube, I'm not cool enough to know TikTok and Instagram and all that. I'm not smart. I'm not cool or hip enough to know about that stuff. But in terms of YouTube, all I see is that people want very short, bite-sized content. However, when I see channels of, around my size or whatever put out that kind of content, it doesn't really do well. So for me, I get confused of like, well, do people actually want that? But then you see videos that people put out 10, 12-minute reviews. And I think a good example, this is Switch Up. Switch Up does some fantastic, top-notch reviews that are thought out, that are, 10, 12 minutes. But those get great views because, again, people, especially with like wanting to review a game, you can't really sum up, in my opinion, you can't really sum up a game in 2 or 3 minutes. I just don't think that's possible to give someone a good overview of if you should buy a game. So to answer your question, that was a long-winded answer. I think, yes, it can be frustrating, but at the end of the day, it just depends on what type of content. I think if it's around video games and reviews and things like that, a more thoughtful, longer approach is good. And you're not going to have people watch all of the content anyway. You might have someone that watches for 30 seconds. You might have someone who watches for 10 minutes. But at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to please everyone. So I think it just comes down to making the stuff that makes you happy. So that was a terrible answer, but that's all I got. So
yeah, it is kind of But sometimes I see other sort of videos and I think, why are these popular? And going into, obviously this is probably get off my lawn talk again, but I'm not a fan of TikTok. Just from my personal experience, whenever I see a TikTok video sort of comes up, it's just someone screaming and shouting, and it's the whole, I've got to get your attention for this short amount of time, because people's attention spans are probably non-existent nowadays, and that's probably why shorter, more in-your-face videos can get more views. And then at the same time, sometimes I'm browsing through memes or meme sites or something that have these shorter videos on of just something funny happening, or someone randomly filming something and putting a clip of it online, and I always refer to it as junk food internet. It's just something like, I've got 20 minutes to kill. I'm not, I'm waiting, I'm just out and about, I'm waiting to be picked up or whatever. I'm not going to commit myself to watching a detailed scripted review, or anything like that, because I could get picked up any minute. So I will just go on something random and look through, just, picked a video of a cat doing something or whatever. But then again, the ones that are scripted and well thought out, well made videos, they're the people I keep coming back to. They're the people I subscribe to. They're the people I click like on. Whereas all these ones that are mind-numbing crap, as Tom puts it, I forget about them. That's why I call it sort of junk food sort of internet, because I've forgotten about it by the time I've come off my phone.
That's a great point. At the end of the day, we're all different, right? Like, without sounding like preachy or weird, like, we're all different, right? Like, what you like is different from what I like. And at the end of the day, if someone is having a day that they just are going to get happiness and enjoyment out of watching 30 seconds of whatever shenanigans, you know what? That's all that matters. And that person that created that, that's awesome. If they're having fun creating the content, that's all that matters. We shouldn't, who are we to say, what people like or don't like? So I think it's a great question, but at the end of the day, like, it's okay to like what you like, you know what I mean? As long as it's not harming others. And even if some of us think it's, mind-numbing or whatever, someone else, that may make their day a little bit better, whereas someone else may watch a 20-minute video that makes their day a little better or whatever. So, that's probably most important, as long as that we're trying to do it with a kind, respectful view of others, So
yeah, different strokes for different folks.
That's it. But good question, though, definitely.
Yeah, but I remember, I'm a postman in my day job, and I remember saying to my colleague once that, I'm doing overtime, I'm working my day off, things like that to get extra money. But I said, isn't it annoying that we're doing all this work, but someone out there is making more money than us just by screaming into a camera?
Well, they've found the golden ticket then, I guess. More power to them.
Anyway, yeah. So thank you very much, Geoffrey. That will wrap up our Goldeneye discussion there, and our second episode of the SaveDex podcast. So thank you so much for joining me again, Geoffrey. I'll put a link to your channel in the description. Do you want to briefly say what to expect from your channel coming up?
Yeah, well, thank you, Dave. Seriously, it means a lot. For anyone that doesn't know, Dave and I are friends in real life, and even though we've never seen each other based on different countries we live in, it's we are friends, and I know we're both grateful for that friendship. So yeah, thank you for just taking the time to let me be a part of this for a couple hours. It was a lot of fun. You have a wonderful community. If you're a fan of indie gaming content, my channel really focuses on honest, comprehensive reviews, some list videos that kind of give you an idea about what a game might be. So if you like that kind of stuff and want to learn about up-to-date indie games, some live streams, some impressions, just all things indie game, come stop by. We have a really kind, loving community, but thank you, Dave. I appreciate your friendship and letting me be a part of this with you.
Awesome. So next week's podcast, I'm going to be talking with Glenn from Switch Up about our favourite movie villains, which is not gaming, so I don't know what we're doing here. There is no rules anymore. They're out the window.
I love it.
So again, make sure you hit that subscribe button for Geoffrey as well. And thank you again, Geoffrey, for joining me. We will see you in the next one.
Yes, indeed. Well, you all have a wonderful, happy day. We'll see you later.